Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and I like to talk about books, and today I'm going to be talking about my 41 most anticipated book releases of 2021. This list is insanely long because I'm insane, so we're just gonna jump on in and we're gonna go real quick. I'm just gonna give you a little bit of information about each of these books. I'm also gonna include links down below to the Goodreads pages so you can check them all out, add them to your TBR if you want, but let's get into it. I'm also gonna be reading off of my computer because I don't just have all this memorized, so that's what I'm looking at. But the first one is The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. This comes out January 5th of 2021 and it is a thriller. This is a Jane Eyre retelling that has a Southern Gothic vibe. I actually already own this book. I'm reading it early and I am super excited to check it out. It is about a woman who is a broke dog walker. She ends up moving to this rich community, I guess, and gets this opportunity to fall for a rich guy so she can like take advantage of him and like infiltrate him. But then she starts being haunted by the ghost of his previous wife, and he just like talks about her a lot. So it kind of sounds like Rebecca vibes. Actually, I haven't read Jane Eyre, so don't know how similar it's going to be to that, but it sounds really suspenseful. I've heard really good early reviews for this one and I am super excited for it. Next up we have The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. This one also comes out on January 5th and this is a historical fiction novel. This book is said to be a singular and stunning debut novel about the forbidden union between two enslaved young men on a deep South plantation, the refuge they find in each other, and a betrayal that threatens their existence. This book sounds so powerful and so moving. I have this on my list to get to really early in the year, so I cannot wait to check it out. Next up, I have Shipped by Angie Hockman. This one comes out on January 19th, and this is a romance book that is said to be sort of like The Unhoneymooners meets The Hating Game. So it is an enemies to lovers story about these co-workers who are competing for a promotion and they end up having to go on a cruise together. And then, as you can expect, they start to fall for each other and things get complicated. So this sounds really fun. It sounds like it's gonna be fast-paced. I really love The Unhoneymooners. I gave The Hating Game a shot and I didn't get too invested in it. I just read the first couple chapters and then put it down, but I still want to give that one a chance eventually. But I think first I'm gonna check out Shipped. Next up, I have If I Disappear by Eliza Jane Brazier, which comes out January 26th. And this is a thriller. It has a podcast element. So it is about a girl whose favorite true crime podcast host goes missing. And so then she starts plunging into the wild backcountry of Northern California and her own dangerous obsession to try to see what is going on. So it sounds like she is just a regular civilian who gets caught up in this true crime world. I love stories like that where it's just a normal, average, everyday person trying to solve a mystery. I also think the podcast element is going to be really interesting, so you might want to pick this one up on audiobook to get the full experience for that. I also think the wild backcountry part of it sounds interesting and like it will create a cool atmosphere for the story. Next up, we have The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp. This one comes out on January 26th. It is a young adult thriller and I've probably talked about this one before because it was supposed to come out in 2020, I believe, and then I think the date keeps getting pushed back because of COVID, but I am so excited for this one. It is about a bank heist and it follows these characters. This main girl who is the daughter of a con artist and she has an interesting story and an interesting history, and the previous night she is caught by her ex-boyfriend kissing her current girlfriend, which I guess he didn't know about all of that, and then all three of them end up getting caught in this bank heist the next day. So it sounds like it'll be tons of tension and drama and secrets being revealed, and I just think it sounds super fun. Next up, we have The Project by Courtney Summers. This one I think I've also talked about before. It says now it's going to be coming out on February 2nd of 2021, and this is another young adult thriller about a woman whose sister gets caught up in a cult and then she tries to investigate to get her out of that. I just want to read more cult novels. That is just what I want to read. The cover of this looks stunning. I've heard great things about Courtney Summers. I am just so excited to dive into a creepy cult story and see where it takes us. I hope both of these books actually get to come out when they are now supposed to come out because I think both of them have been pushed back and I have been highly anticipating them. Next up, another thriller, The Survivors by Jane Harper. This one is coming out February 2nd. This is a coastal thriller, so I feel like it's gonna have really good atmosphere. It's about this guy who has this secret past he's got guilt and regrets about, and he comes back to his hometown after many years later after he's grown up, and then a body comes up on the shore and then it starts this mystery and that starts having things from his past come out and be explored. And I just love a good thriller that has like something that happened in the past and now there's things going on in the future and what is going to be revealed. And I also just really love coastal vibes. So banking on this one having a great atmosphere. Next, we have a sci-fi thriller. So it is called The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey, and this one is coming out February 16th. This is about a woman who creates a clone of herself, and then the clone starts having an affair with her husband, and then the husband ends up dying, and the wives have to clean up the mess. So I don't even know. I don't want to know too much more. I think that sounds super interesting. What a cool element to add in that sci-fi clone element. I feel like I don't read enough sci-fi thrillers, and when I do, I feel like I always enjoy them. So I feel like this will be a really, really good one. Next up, we have The Upstairs House by Julia Fine. This one is coming out February 23rd, and this is a horror book. The blurb says it is a provocative meditation on new motherhood. Shirley Jackson meets the awakening, in which a postpartum woman's psychological unraveling becomes intertwined with the ghostly appearance of children's book writer Margaret Wise Brown, who is the author of Goodnight Moon. This sounds so bizarre, completely bizarre, but completely interesting. I'm completely hooked. Cannot wait for this one. Next up, we have Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This one is coming out February 23rd, and this is a romance story. It is about this woman who just completed her PhD program, and she goes to Vegas, gets really drunk, and marries a stranger while she is there, which is very uncharacteristic for her. She ends up marrying a woman, and then I think it is her exploring her sexuality and just coming of age in general. So sounds really fun. I absolutely adore this cover, and it's not exactly up my alley. I'm not always into these like contemporary stories, but this one sounds like a really fun time. Next up, we have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is a historical fiction that is coming out on March 2nd. And the blurb for this one says, in this addictive and spectacularly imagined debut, a female apothecary secretly dispenses poisons to liberate women from the men who have wronged them, setting 3 lives across centuries on a dangerous collision course. This sounds like it's going to be a fun, fantastical, feminist adventure. I love it when there are multiple stories going on that end up colliding. I love this idea of this fantasy element of these potions being provided for women to free themselves from men. I just can already feel the atmosphere I'm expecting this one to have, so cannot wait for this one. Also, really love this cover. Next up, we have Every Last Fear by Alex Finlay. This one is coming out March 2nd, and this is a thriller that I believe is being called a debut because Alex Finlay doesn't really have any other books, but it's a pseudonym, and I low-key think it could be AJ Finn, so just keep that in mind. But this is a psychological thriller about a family that is made infamous by a true crime documentary that ends up being found dead, leaving their surviving son to uncover the truth about their final days. Don't have a ton to go off there, but don't really need it for a thriller, and I love a good psychological thriller, so hope that one's good. Next up, we have a book I am super pumped about, and that is The Babysitter by Liza Rodman. This is a true crime novel about a woman who grew up with her babysitter who was a serial killer. That sounds wild. Can't wait. Next up, we have Clara and the Sun by Kazu Ishiguro. That is coming out March 2nd, and this is a sci-fi literary fiction piece. I actually have not read from this author before, but they have been really highly acclaimed. I think they've won a Nobel Prize for one of their books before, and this one sounds very interesting and like a good place to start. So it is about Clara, who is an artificial friend. She lives in this store and she wants someone to buy her. And it says that it explores the question, what does it mean to love? It sounds profound and thought-provoking and speculative and fantastical and interesting. So I'm here for it. Next up, we have Her Dark Lies by J.T. Ellison. This one is coming out March 9th, and this is a thriller that is a coastal wedding thriller. I really don't know too much more about it, but it gives me the guest list vibes, and I loved the guest list, so happy to read this one as well. Next up, we have Delicates by Brenna Thumler. This one is coming out March 16th, and this is the second installment to the graphic novel Sheets. I loved this graphic novel when I read it in October, and I really love Brenna Thumler's art style, so I'm really excited to see where this story goes. Next, we have She's Too Pretty to Burn by Wendy Hurd. This one is coming out March 21st, and this is a young adult thriller that is inspired by The Picture of Dorian Gray. It is a sexy psychological thriller that explores the intersections of love, art, danger, and power. I've actually never never read this classic, but I've been hearing some interesting hype around this book, and it just sounds really different from a lot of the things I read. I don't read a ton of things that incorporate art, so I think that'll be a fun new element to explore. Next up, you're gonna be surprised. This is on the list, but it is Every Vow You Break by Peter Swanson. This one's coming out March 23rd, and it is a thriller. If you have been watching my videos, you know I don't really vibe with Peter Swanson, but I'm gonna keep this one on my radar. I'm gonna let other people read it first and check out some critical reviews of it, but then I might end up reading it as well if things look like they're going well for this. But it is another coastal wedding thriller that seems to be a big theme coming out of the next year for thrillers, and it is about a bride's dream honeymoon becoming a nightmare when a man with whom she's had a regrettable one-night stand shows up in this electrifying psychological thriller. So we'll see. Like I said, gonna check out reviews first because I don't always love Peter Swanson stuff. In fact, I've never loved anything I've read from Peter Swanson, but I do love a coastal wedding thriller, and that is just the vibe of 2021, so I might have to just check it out because of that. Next up, we have Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas. This one comes out March 23rd, and it is a young adult fantasy mystery that is from the same author of Cemetery Boys, which I have not gotten around to reading yet, but it was insanely hyped, topped the charts. People love that book. So I definitely want to check that book out, but I also am really interested in this one because it has like a fantasy dark woods setting, and also this cover, stunning. And so this is about a town where children go missing. People want answers. When children go missing in the small coastal town of Astoria, people look to Wendy for answers. There's dark woods, sounds like fun times, and like I said, another small coastal town. Next up, we have Of Women and Salt by Gabriela Garcia, and this one is coming out on April 6th. This is a historical fiction that is a multi-generational family saga, a sweeping, masterful debut about a daughter's fateful choice, a mother motivated by her own past, and a family legacy that begins in Cuba before either of them were born. I really can be down for a multi-generational family saga when it is done well. Typically, I prefer to have my stories be more contained and explore a singular moment in time or a turning point in someone's life, and I don't generally love those really long, sweeping stories, but when it contains multiple family members, especially when it is about women and the connections that women have throughout their family, then I'm usually pretty interested in those, so I do have this one on my radar. Next up, we have Call Baby by Morgan Jenkins. This comes out on April 6th, and this is a fiction that seems to have a light fantasy element. So this is a fiction debut from this author who has previously written other non-fiction pieces, I suppose, that brings to life one powerful and enigmatic family in a tale rife with secrets, betrayal, intrigue, and magic. I really don't know too much about this one, but I don't really want to. I like when there's family and magic and secrets. That all sounds like a really good recipe to a really good time. Next up, we have Pieces by Helen Oyemi. This one comes out on April 6th, and it is a fiction with some fantasy elements. I have not read anything from this author yet, but they have been on my radar for a while, so I just thought, why not jump in next year with their new book? It is a vivid and inventive new novel about a couple forever changed by an unusual train voyages. It's about what it means to be seen by another person, whether it's your lover or a stranger on a train, and what happens when things you thought were firmly in the past turn out to be right beside of you. I have no idea what to expect with this one. I've heard mixed things about this author. Some people love their books, some people think they're really boring or weird or confusing, so we'll see how this one ends up. Next up, we have The Paper Garden by Caitlin Vance, and this one just has April as the release date, so I'm not exactly sure of its exact release date, but this is going to be an anthology that is a darkly humorous, gothic, and speculative story collection exploring contemporary queer romances, mother-daughter relationships, and mental illness by reimagining fairy tales or myths. And if you had to ask me what my favorite things are in books, it would be queer romances, mother-daughter relationships, and mental illness. So I don't really read anthologies much, but when I saw this one, I was like, that is on my list. That's gonna be on the top of my list. I will be getting that as soon as it comes out and checking it out because those are some of my favorite things to read about in stories. So I'm super, super excited for this one. Next up, we have Mirrorland by Carol Johnstone. This one comes out on April 20th, and this is a thriller that is psychological suspense that has the startling twists of Gone Girl and the haunting emotional power of Room. This is the story of twin sisters, the man they both love, and the dark childhood that they can't leave behind. So sisters, especially twins, is a pretty common thing in thrillers that I have not explored much, so I thought this would be a good one to give a shot. Also, dark childhood stuff usually comes out on these sister stories, so I don't know. I'm going to go out on a limb and explore this subgenre of thrillers with this one and see if I like it. Next, we have The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He. This is a young adult sci-fi story, which sounds out of my comfort zone, but it looks stunning and I just have to read it. So it is one of the most twisty, surprising, engaging page-turner YAs that you'll read this year. We were liars with a sci-fi scope, lost with a satisfying resolution. So there is one girl on a stranded island, and then there's one girl that is living in this eco city, which is like the last unpolluted place on Earth. I don't really know how their stories connect or what's gonna happen. I mean, I'm sure you're not supposed to know because that's the whole point of reading the book, but it reminds me of Wilder Girls, which I thought had so much potential but missed the mark for me. So I'm excited to give this one a try. Next up, we have Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon, which comes out on May 4th. And I don't really know how to categorize this one because I've seen it called fantasy, I've seen it called fiction, I've seen it called horror, so not really sure what to categorize this as, but it is about a woman who ends up birthing twins in the woods after running away from her religious community. She undergoes some sort of metamorphosis, she's being hunted. The book was described as gothic. I don't know, it's got dark forest vibes, there's some sort of weird metamorphosis happening. Again, there are also twins. So I really liked The Deep by Rivers Solomon that I read this year, so I'm excited to give this one a shot as well. I don't want to disrupt the continuity of this video, but I have to blow this candle out. Next, we have The Baby Is Mine by Owen Con-Braithwaite, and this one is coming out on May 27th, and I believe it is a thriller. This is the same author as My Sister the Serial Killer, and this is another one that I don't know a ton about or what to expect. Even by reading the synopsis, I'm not sure. There is something going on during the pandemic. This person is fleeing his uncle's house. This person is fleeing to his uncle's house that is in this lockdown city. He arrives during a blackout. His aunt is there with a baby and another woman, and they're both claiming that the baby is theirs. I don't know what's going on with this story, but I really love My Sister the Serial Killer, so I'm sure this one will not disappoint me either. Next up, we have One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This one is coming out on June 1st. I freaking love Red, White, and Royal Blue, so this book will be read the second it is published. It is about a 23-year-old who realizes her subway crush is displaced from the 1970s Brooklyn, and she must do everything in her power to help her and try not to fall in love with the girl lost in time before it's too late. So we have a weird time travel thing going on. We have a woman-woman romance. I am obsessed, can't wait. Next up, we have The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris, which is also coming out on June 1st, and this is a literary thriller, I believe, which is said to be Get Out meets The Devil Wears Prada. It is a debut novel, and it is about the tension that unfurls when two young Black women meet against the starkly white backdrop of New York City book publishing. I can already feel the tension that is going to be in this one. It sounds like it is going to be an exhilarating ride, and I am excited for it. Like I have said a million times. Have you been counting how many times I've said I'm excited? Because I'm excited. Next up, we have The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, also coming out on June 1st, and this is a psychological thriller from the same author as The Silent Patient. I personally was a little disappointed with The Silent Patient, but I think that might have been because it was hyped up so much before I got a chance to read it. So I think if I just read this one early and I don't listen to like hype or negative reviews or anything, that I will be able to read it without being biased. But this is a psychological suspense that weaves together Greek mythology, murder, and obsession. It is something to do with this secret society of female students known as the Maidens. It reminds me of Bunny by Mona Awad. When I was reading the synopsis, it sounds like a dark academia story with some Greek mythology weaved in there. Honestly, I don't see how this couldn't be better than The Silent Patient, but I don't want to get my hopes up. Next up, we have A Psalm of Storms and Silence by Roseanne A. Brown, which is also coming out on June 1st, and this is a young adult fantasy novel that is the second book in the series of A Song of Wraiths and Ruin. It's also the final book because this is just a duology, so this will be the follow-up to that story and closing out the story. The first book was about these two characters who end up basically in these crazy circumstances, and they have to try to kill the other one, but they don't know know the other one's trying to kill them. This one I did not want to read the synopsis for. I just want to jump in and kind of see where the story takes us, because it did end on quite a big moment, and so I'm excited to see the fallout from that. Next up, we have The Girl from the Sea by Molly Ostertag. This is also coming out on June 1st, and it is a graphic novel about two girls on an island. One saves the other from drowning. They fall in love. It reminds me of Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno, just reading the description and looking at the art style, and I feel like it's gonna have such a cute, fun atmosphere for a summer graphic novel read. Next, we have The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nhi Vo, also coming out on June 1st, so that's going to be a big day for a lot of new books coming out. And this is a historical fiction with fantasy elements, so it is said to be reinventing the classic of the American canon as a coming-of-age story full of magic, mystery, and glittering excess. I don't know what to expect with this one. I don't really need to know too much. I'm interested in the cover a lot. I'm interested in this idea of there being this like glitz and glam and magic all put together in this story, so I'm just gonna jump on in with high hopes for this one and see where it takes me. Next up, we have Darling by Kay Ancrum, and this one is coming out on June 22nd. It is a young adult thriller that is a dark retelling of Peter Pan. It's following Wendy Darling, who runs into Peter Pan, and they end up going through the underground of Chicago. Sounds like it's gonna be a really fun time. I'm excited to see how dark it can get, and I've been wanting to read Kay Ancrum's books for a while, so as I usually do, I think it'll be fun to jump in with the newest release and then start exploring their backlist if I find that I really enjoy it. Next up, another one of my very highly anticipated books for the year is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This one is coming out on July 6th, and this is his latest thriller novel. This is set in 1991, and it is about a movie-obsessed college student who is in the car with a man who might be a serial killer. So in classic Riley Sager style, we don't know too much about the plot. We just sort of have the setup, and then we'll get to see where the story takes us. But I have really enjoyed every Riley Sager book I've read so far. I've read them all except for his second book, The Last Time I Lied. So as I've said a million times, I'm very excited. Next up, we have The World Ends Here by Rory Power, and this one actually does not have a cover or synopsis or solidified release date yet. It is said to be expected to be released in July. We really don't know much about this book other than what Rory Power says on Twitter, calling this the ice novel, so no idea what to expect, but I've read everything Rory Power has written so far, so I'll give this one a shot as well, and it'll kind of be the third book to see if I want to continue reading their stuff or if it's maybe not for me. Next up, we have For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. This one is coming out on July 27th, and this is a thriller. So I read Samantha Downing's latest book this year, and I want to go back and read her first book as well, but I'm super excited for this new one coming out because it is set at a prestigious private school, complete with interfering parents, overeager students, and one teacher who just wants to teach them all a lesson. So it sounds like it's got some nice dark academia vibes. People love Samantha Downing's works. They love her thrillers. I really have not heard a bad thing about either of her books that have come out so far, so definitely excited to read this third one as well. Next up, we have All's Well by Mona Awad. This one is coming out on August 3rd, and this is a horror book, so this is from the same author of Bunny, which is a super weird, wild book that I really enjoyed, and this new book is a darkly funny novel about a theater professor suffering chronic pain who, in the process of staging a troubled production of Shakespeare's most maligned play, suddenly and miraculously recovers. And I think I've heard something about there being a deal with the devil in this. Next up, we have this book that was sort of on my radar, but I was like, probably won't be for me. And then I read the description and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read that. And that is The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gould. This one is coming out on August 3rd, and it's a young adult thriller with fantasy elements. So this is a thrilling debut about the things that lurk in dark corners, the parts of you that can't remain hidden, and about finding home in places and people you didn't expect. So this book is set in Snake Bite, Oregon. There are teenagers disappearing, some turning up dead, the weather is being weird, and all fingers seem to point to TV's most popular ghost hunters who have just returned to town. And then the daughter of TV's Paraspectors is going there with her dads and then starts exploring what's going on in the town. And there's a lot more information in the synopsis, but I don't really need to read too much more. There's like ghost hunters who have a TV show and a town where weird things are happening, and I'm here for it. That sounds like a very fun time. Next up, we have A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins, and this is coming out on August 31st. This is the same author of The Girl on the Train and Into the Water, which I enjoyed both of those books. It's been a long time. Paula Hawkins has not come out with a book in a long time, so I'm excited to see what her new book is, but this says it starts with a brutal murder on a London canal boat. Laura is a likely suspect. She's witnessed leaving the scene, and for a while it looks like a straightforward case. But in this book, Paula Hawkins explores that no tragedy happens in isolation. An accident in childhood can have ramifications a decade later. Trusting the wrong person at the wrong time can derail a life completely. So there's not like a full synopsis of this. We've only seen what Paula Hawkins has said about the book, but it sounds like it has the potential to be interesting. She hasn't done anything in a while, and I want to check out her new book. And lastly, the book that I'm probably the most excited for all year, but unfortunately it's coming out at the latest time, is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, which is set to come out on September 21st. This is a contemporary fantasy, and you probably know that The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune was one of my absolute favorite books of the year, and this one sounds like it's going to have all the same quirks and wit and charm as The House in the Cerulean Sea did, so I am so excited for this one. It is said to be a contemporary fantasy with TJ Klune's signature quirk and charm about a ghost who refuses to cross over and the ferryman he falls in love with. That sounds so cute. I'm ready to cry. So that is it for the 41 books I have that I am the most excited about that are coming out next year. I hope I'm gonna be able to get to all of them next year. I usually try to balance new releases with backlist stuff, and this year I read over 140 books, so factoring in all that information, I feel like I'll be able to get to a lot of these books, and I can track that throughout the year as well, which will be fun. I also typically do most anticipated book releases videos a little more often for the season or a particular month. So I've done them for books that were coming out in the fall or books that came out in December, and I think I'm still going to continue to do that this year as well. So I might do one before the spring for the most anticipated spring book releases, summer, fall, and winter, and then I'll be able to find more books as more are announced and then give you more detail about each of those books, because I'll just be going over like 5 to 10 instead of 41 really quickly. So you can also look out for that as well over the coming year. But let me know in the comments down below what you're most excited for that's coming out next year, and if any of the ones that are on my list are also on yours as well. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!